Hi, I'm Nicole Crowley, host of Science is Appealing. Every week we illustrate a different branch of science. Today I'm going to be talking about various topics that all broadly fit under the subject of neuroscience. This includes shared consciousness, ESP, and hypnosis. And the man that's going to explain these terminologies to us is the person that the late CBS 60 Minutes journalist Mike Wallace called either a scientific entertainer or an entertaining scientist. The man Mike Wallace was referring to is the world's most renowned mind reader and mentalist, the Amazing Kreskin. But before I go into my interview with Amazing Kreskin, I want to ask you a question. What movies do you think of when you think of hypnosis? If you're like me, you think of Bela Lugosi and Dracula.
Come here.
I'm sleeping.
Come here.
Fine, I'm getting up. 5 more minutes.
Come here.
I hear the master and I must obey. In this clip, Dracula hypnotizes people. They have no free will, and they are basically his slave. Well, my guest today, the Amazing Kreskin, is no stranger to hypnosis. He holds the title of being the world's youngest hypnotist, and he's been hypnotizing people for over 50 years. Here's just one clip from the Regis and Kathy Lee show, where the Amazing Kreskin hypnotizes people during their Halloween special.
You couldn't. All right,
we're here with the Amazing Kreskin, of course.
I'm going to do something. You know who The Shadow was? You see the movie The Shadow with Alec Baldwin, all of you folks? Did any of you see it? All right, those of you standing, folks, close your eyes again. Try to open them. Try hard. In fact, all of you, hold your right arm in front of you. Hold it straight, right arm, straight ahead, rigid, straight ahead, rigid. Listen to me. Listen to me. Try to take your arms down. Try as hard as you possibly can. Try in every way, shape. Try to push it down. You can't. Now listen to me. Listen to me. I'm going to cause someone to become invisible by putting a cape around them. The cape is going to be handled me now. And that cape is right over here if we can grab it. Your arms are going to come down and drop to your sides, but your eyes stay closed. You can bring your arm down. Now, we're going to make one person here invisible. And this person, your arm can come down, your eyes stay closed. Listen to me.
This I got to see.
This is a cape of invisibility. You can neither see the person, you cannot hear the person, you cannot see him in any way, shape, or form. When you open your eyes, the only one standing here will be two people. Only people standing here will be two people, right here. All of you now, folks, open your eyes, look at me. By the way, do you see, you can open your eyes, I know they were stuck. Oh, you see my hand here, folks? Do you see who's here right here? Do you see who's here? Right? You see? Nod your head. If you see my hand, raise your hand up. See my hand? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. You see it. Put your hand down. You see my hand, right? Put your hand up if you see it. Put your hand down again. Put it down. You see my hand, don't you? If you see my hand, raise your hand. You see it. You see it. Those of you who see my hand, raise your hand. You see it real clear. You see both my hands, don't you? You see it. You see my hands? Nod your head. If you do, you see it very clearly. I'm going to show you something very strange. Wouldn't it be interesting is if this handkerchief, as I hold it here, I'm just going to let go of it, that it's suspended by itself. Watch. You can put your hands down. Watch. Watch. What's the matter? Let's get a microphone over. What's the matter, man?
It's floating.
Yeah, it is floating, isn't it? It is floating. It really is floating, isn't it? It really is floating by. Isn't that what? It's floating by. Okay, keep it
Getting
floating.
Weird here.
There's a tall table here. I wanted that tall table. I wanted it on the set, and that table I was going to tilt. It's gone. The stool. Look at. Examine it. There's nothing there. The stool is so critical. Now, this is incredible because magic, true magic would be in the mind.
$2,000 a day, Bobby.
Look at, watch this. Watch. Come over closer. Watch. Closer. Watch. I'm going to let go of this. The whole hand can hold it. The whole hand. Is that not, Kathy? We should hear what they're saying. I mean, Regis, isn't this wild? See if you. What's going on?
It's looking for strength.
Floating. It's just leaning.
Yeah,
it's just leaning.
Right.
Tell it to stand up. Tell it to stand up. Say stand up.
Stand.
Look, isn't that not wild? What do you think of that?
I don't know.
Tell it to come off the floor, to rise up in the air. Tell it to rise.
Lift, rise up. Come off the
Is that not wild? Isn't that wild? Would it not be incredible? What'd you say then? Well, you know what? I want you to try to figure out, because this handkerchief is going to dance on that chair by itself. I'm going to let go of it. It's going to, all of you, come around the handkerchief. See if you can figure out. You can't. It's going to dance just on the chair. Just on the chair. See, come on. Come on around it, sir. What's it going on, sir? Oh, he's looking for wires. Is that what? Is there anything holding it up at all?
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing. Nothing at all. Now, I'll tell you what the craziest thing is. One final thing. There's a plant over there. Look at the plant on that table. Wouldn't it be crazy if that plant came off the table and started coming towards you? Let's have that plant rise. Right on the table, right there. Let's have it come around the front here. Isn't that wild? Isn't that over here? He's looking for wires. What do you think of that? Isn't that wild? Isn't that something? You ever see anything like that? You ever see anything? Whoa, watch it. Well, isn't that wild? Look, now wait. Hold it up in the air. Hold it. Now watch. One more thing. Hold it over here. I'll hide there. I'm going to show you how this is done. Watch their faces. You're going to be, all of you come close so you're kind of crowded together. In a moment when I spell my name, you're going to see something appear out of nowhere. You've never seen anything like this in your life. When I get to the letter N, K-R-E-S-K-I-N. Look. Isn't that wild? Isn't that wild?
The Amazing Kreskin. Became Mr.
That was incredible. Kreskin, thank you very much.
Thank you for
From the clip, it's clear to see that hypnosis makes you do and see things that the hypnotist wants you to. But according to Kreskin, nothing could be further from the truth.
Well, Nicole, you've hit a very dramatic topic, one that's been written about in textbooks around the world. I'm very proud that some medical textbooks have been dedicated to me, and I'm not a physician. Some laws have been changed in the United States, and in England, a law never went through because the head of parliament said, if this all there is to hypnosis, then it's more dangerous to walk down the street. I started early in my career, 60 years ago. People say it was 160, but it was 60 years ago, as a mentalist and a hypnotist. But that changed very dramatically because here, not far from here, when I was 18 years old, a psychologist came to me, Dr. Harold Hansen. Brilliant man, PhD. He was from Denmark and was a writer and successful therapist. And he said, I've seen you work. You're going to work with my patients. I was just getting out of high school. I had no degree in psychology. I was starting Seton Hall, but I was professionally traveling. He said, I want you to use your abilities as an aid to working with my patients. He wanted his wife to have her child without any anesthetic. And he had gone to famous professional medical people, like very famous medical hypnotists, and they couldn't do anything. He said, well, you went to the best. He said, well, see what you can do. She had her wife without any anesthetic. She had her child, She had her child without any anesthetic. And I started working with his patients. And then something was wrong. After a few years went by, people were getting better who were not very good hypnotic subjects. One man afraid of heights was able to stand at the edge of the apartment building where he had his offices. Another went to church and sat in the middle of the pew. And I said, even though they're not deeply hypnotized, they're responding. And I wanted to see what I could do without putting people into a trance. Well, if I'm remembered for anything, aside from all my work as a professional entertainer, I hope the contribution is my findings, because I came to the conclusion that there is no hypnosis. None at all. None at all. None. Let me start over. There's none at all. That it is all pure suggestion. And it's interesting because one of the pioneers in hypnosis, Bernheim, years and years ago, who had taught Libiol, he was in France. And years later, after this quiet physician who turned to hypnosis and wrote a book called Suggestive Therapeutics, turn of the century, around 1900s, in Paris, there was a great conclave of these professional people. And he said, I don't think there is any hypnosis. I think it's suggestion. And all these followers of his and supporters and medical people started booing him because there was something romantic about the idea of a trance. Nobody really is in a trance. They're wide awake, but we are suggestible. We are all, nothing to do with gullibility. The most suggestible people are people who are artistic, people who have empathy, people who are able to talk to others and almost feel the way they feel and are flexible in their thinking.
How many people would you say you've hypnotized over the years?
How many people have responded to? I'm not going to exaggerate. I'm going to be conservative. Literally over 1 million people.
Wow.
Because in colleges there are 100 some people who volunteer on stage, but you know, we've lost the meaningfulness of hypnotic phenomena. We are more suggestible in crowds. That's why riots. You know, with a riot, people do things without feeling a moral responsibility. But then people laugh at something that's funny if they're with a larger group. And if you're involved in if you watch Alfred Hitchcock, who is one of the finest manipulators of human behavior in the history of movie making, he knew how to get under our skin. You get frightened. You're frightened in a movie. You think, well, wait a minute. There's a person sitting around the camera. There's someone behind me. I'm not scared. But Hitchcock knew how to trap us because he had things happen to these people on the movie screen that happened to us, and we couldn't escape from it. So the mind isn't it a fascinating phenomenon, how the mind becomes influenced, and that's what life is all about. And by the way, and Freud felt this way too. If you want to talk about hypnosis in the true sense of the word, there is no greater hypnotic phenomena than two people in love. There's no critical thinking then, there's not reasoning, and the emotions reach a high. And Freud even felt that was one of the highest levels of hypnotic phenomena. I should have more of that in my private life. Oh, that's another story. We are not going into that now, folks. I warn all of you out there.
Aw, too bad.
I like her remark. We may change this later on. I may be influencing her, and I won't talk about it right now.
We're going to go on a date
Anyway,
after.
I was, it's the only case in the recorded history in the Western world, and a prominent law professor is going to devote part of a book to it, but I was tried by a jury in 1986. No, I've not committed any crimes, but I had offered $50,000 for the proof of a trance, and this person came out of nowhere, and she didn't really know the field, and I had scientists, psychologists who were going to be part of the team, show us what you can show in hypnosis that Kreskin can't show with just pure. And she wanted a trial, and we went on trial. I won the trial, but I have to tell you, because this is education for people to know, there's a lot less justice in the courtroom in the United States. In England and many parts of the world, if you win a case, the other side pays your expenses. That's not true. The $112,000 that was spent, the 2 years of work, the judge at the end threw the book at them and said to the psychiatrist and her, "You've proved nothing, you've wasted time," but I had to do it because this was a belief in my life, and I stand by my beliefs. Any more people challenging me as far as it's now a $100,000 offer, they're going to have to pay all expenses if they're going to go into the courtroom. Other than that, things are fine.
That's good.
You have to read my thoughts. Sometimes there's a message which I think everyone gathers, but I have to just hold back.
I can guess what my thought would be.
Folks, I'm in trouble now.
I know too. I can guess what my thought would be if I had to pay all the expenses. Speaking of a legal system and Kreskin, Kreskin believes testimony given under hypnosis is concerning. Today, hypnosis is done by various persons who are trained in science, including police officers in New York and Los Angeles. Yet, what someone remembers when being hypnotized can be tainted due to a number of different factors, including suggestions given by police, false memories, and straight-out lying. But take someone who is supposedly hypnotized and claims to remember a certain person committing a crime, and a jury is bound to believe their testimony is true. And that is why Kreskin agrees with New Jersey Supreme Court when they ruled in favor of limited admissibility of testimony given under hypnosis. How do you tell if someone would be more susceptible to being
Responding to suggestion. Well, there's a number of factors involved. Not everybody is suggestible in front of an audience because there's distractions and everything else. You have to find out if a person seems to envelop themselves in what you're saying, talking to you, sometimes move the way you move. By the way, all of you looking in, if you want to really get closer to somebody when you're talking to them or having a relationship, and don't do this as a trick, this is not trickery, but for a little while, imitate their motions. If they gesture, do the same thing. Don't keep doing this because it's not after a while it's not comfortable. But if you imitate their motions and start to nod the way they do and gesture and pick up the cup at the same time, after a while a person may start to mimic what you're doing because they're really becoming part of you, part of your world. And that tells you that the person has this ability to experience what someone else is saying. Also, what people don't realize is we should learn the language of other people. If you listen long enough, you'll find out some people think in terms of pictures. Others think in terms of sound. Others think in terms of how they feel. How do you find this out? Just listen to what they're saying. You know, I don't see eye to eye with that. That doesn't look right to me. Now they're using the word sights. Others will say, that doesn't sound good. I don't even like the way that sounds. Those people tend to think in terms of what they hear rather than what they see. So unconsciously, if you use the same language, you can get through to people more clearly. And we've lost this art.
So do you believe in the theory of like a shared conscience?
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that remark, a shared conscience. You know, through the words. Can I give you a hint? And I often say that because I've done over 2,000 college shows in the United States and Canada, and sometimes if you're asked a question, of course, a whole class can be dealt with it. But once in a while, you're with someone and you ask them a question, if they spend a long time and use a lot of technical language, they may not know the hell of what they're talking about, because we often mask things in claptrap. But if something can be answered simply and succinctly, and it seems to make a picturesque sense, then they really have a handle on things. That's really what life is all about. But I think communications today is, by the way, more of a challenge. We've become socially dysfunctional because we're relying too much on machinery, and we're not listening to each other. I'm going to tell you something that I've really talked about, and when I've been interviewed through the years by reporters who come to private affairs, corporate affairs, and they've interviewed me after, and I said, I want to teach you a lesson on how we don't listen as much anymore. This is a true story. I've done this maybe 700 or 800 times. I said, listen, they're having a reception after the show. There's having food and everything else. The president of the company's there and what have you. Stand by me, but don't show any reaction. Just hear what I'm saying. We'll go in, and when I walk into maybe it's 150 people, maybe it's 600 people, but usually the president, the vice president, and the treasurer, they're kind of all lined up to say hello to me. Thank you, sir. Thank you. And I go up to one of them and say, it's nice to meet you. I just raped your wife. How did you feel about the second part of the program? In 40 years of my doing this, hear me now, nobody has ever heard it. Once or twice, or once in a while they'll go like this, and then they'll go on talking because not expecting to hear something, they don't hear it. And reporters, as they write, they'll say, my God, and he said it to them directly. It wasn't to insult anybody. It was to show that if we have a mindset, we don't hear what's being said. Yeah. Don't start doing that, folks, and use that language. I don't want you getting in trouble, but it's a lesson to learn.
You could put on lists for that sometimes.
But you know what it says? It tells us.
That's so funny.
If we go into something making up our mind of what we're going to hear or how it's going to go, we may be losing what's going on. When I jog, I run an hour every night between 4 and 5 in the morning usually. Wow. And I don't wear earphones. I could listen to music. I don't listen to this. I listen to nature. Because, we're sharing this earth, and the animals and the insects and the breeze and everything. It's a beautiful pastoral part of it, and it gives you a chance to reflect. Yeah.
Kreskin is recognized for being able to read thoughts. Because of his talent for reading thoughts, he collaborated in psychological clinical studies, extending into the realm of parapsychology and power of suggestion. And throughout the years, he has made some major predictions. And one of my favorite parts of his performance is when he allows people from the audience to hide his check, and if he doesn't find it, he doesn't get paid.
The check test, one drama critic said it all. I was in Pittsburgh, and I was there for a week or two at a theater, not one night. And the next day there was no review of my program, and I And then the next day there wasn't. I thought, gee, wasn't he? Then they said, yeah, Kreskin, he was there. The third day there was a review. It turns out, Nicole, he came opening night. He came to the matinee the next day, and he came to that evening. And then he wrote this beautiful piece. He says, watching Kreskin's search for his check, which for the sake of those who don't know, in my college audiences and my theaters, a committee is picked from the audience of strangers. I hand them my check or a voucher that stands for my check. Two of the committee escort me from the theater, and the committee, while I'm out of the theater, hide my check anywhere within the theater and then return to the stage. When I come back in, no one talks to me. There's no questions and answers, but the committee must focus on what they've done, and if I don't find my fee, I don't get paid. And he said in his review, watching this 3 nights shows in a row was like watching a play in which there was a mystery, but he said the incredible thing is the mystery is different every night because my audience scripts the mystery. And it has become, it's been written about all over the world. It's been dramatized, even in the movie The Great Buck Howard. And of course, people ask, have I ever failed? I failed 9 times. I lost in New Zealand when I failed $51,000. But there's a side story that fascinates behaviorists and students, because like some of the colleges I've been back 11, 15, 18 years in a row. One of the failures was at a show for the American Medical Association. Here it was at the Atlantic City, and because a lot of doctors wanted to see my show, they had more people than they could accommodate, so they put up folding chairs. I come back in, and I'm walking around, someone's concentrating, and I have some things driving me to go to this doctor who's sitting in a chair, not at a table, and I had her stand, and she wasn't sitting on, I looked under the chair, I put the chair back. I went back to her 4 times. I was drawn nowhere else, and finally, standing in front of her, I said, I give up, I have to forfeit my fee. And the president of the College of Surgeons stood up at the dais and said, Mr. Kreskin, we're going to pay you anyway. I said, no, this is the integrity of my life. I failed. We'll turn it over to a charity. They turned it over to Seton Hall University on my alma mater, which I was proud that they did that. Let me tell you what was horrible about the failure. My right foot was 1/2 inch from the check. Out of the room, they had moved a tremendous amount of furniture, rolled the rug up of the auditorium, put the check back, rolled the rug back, and put all the furniture, and my foot was literally standing on it. I didn't find it, but can you imagine how horrifying it was? I was that close to it and didn't find it. But the other thing is, there's an Achilles heel, which I've rarely talked about, and I have no protection. Houdini, when he was doing escapes, amongst the crowd on stage that brought up locks, they check and watch to make sure that the locks were not capable of being jammed, or little pebbles were being put in because you could not escape. So I have no protection, because in 4 of the failures, one at a very fine university in Texas, when I failed, something didn't seem right. And in one case, it turns out the committee hit a half a dozen or a dozen other checks all over the place, so none of the committee knew where they were. So I couldn't find it. I could have made an issue and said, this is not fair. But I said, no, that's it. It turns out a few weeks later, it's in my office. I have pages upon pages. Every single student at this university signed the same letter, in a letter of apology. I got thousands, and the head of the university sent a tremendous apology.
Yet despite all this, Kreskin does not call himself a psychic.
You don't claim to have psychic abilities, but what would you call your ability?
I don't like to give the impression that this is something supernatural. Supernormal is a word that maybe some could say. Dr. Berthel Schwartz, a very famous psychiatrist who passed away a few months ago, had done a lot of research in parapsychology and kept using me as an example of paranormal phenomena. But this ability, it's a high sensitivity. Dr. Margaret Mead, who was a legendary anthropologist, used to say to me, don't use the word mentalist, use the word sensitive. Now, I knew what she meant. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to touch the mic. I knew what she meant. If you read the books of a century ago, the old books of the romantic parts of the world, France and Italy and Spain, everything else, and they referred to people who had unusual abilities as sensitives. A woman who was maybe a medium, and they weren't all claiming supernatural, but maybe she was a sensitive. It was a word, but today we don't really know the meaning of that word. It meant that abilities that many people may have dormant have risen to a higher level, and I guess the reason Martin Mead felt that is she says you become tuned into people. She would take maybe 200 college students to see me. Whenever I was in colleges, say just sit and listen. The man is not supernatural because she felt primitive tribes in Africa, she wrote about it, have telepathic abilities. She said it was far more common because they weren't overly barraged by television and all modern sophistication. So the word, I guess you would say the word is sensitive, that I've learned to raise an ability, which most of us have, but we don't use it except maybe in terms of crises.
This has been another exciting episode of Science is Appealing, and come back next week for part 2 of the Kreskin interview.